Hey guys, Sam here. How's it going? It's been a long time. A quick update from me before I get into this video, and it'll be quick because it's not about updates of life. It's all about these topics in particular. But I was ill for a while. I had a pretty intense case of gastroenteritis, so that really knocked me out, and I was just recovering from that. Lost a lot of weight, about like 12 kilograms or so. So, yeah, I was off work for a while as well. So everything just stopped pretty much. But getting back into this again now. And yeah, so today it's we're looking at how discussion is essential for your growth. And that's kind of abstract, but I mean discussion literally with everything, whether it's politics, which we don't go to on this channel, whether it's like your kind of principles, philosophies for life, how you view things, just like your opinions on pretty much everything, and why discussion is important. Because obviously the alternative is not to discuss these things, and you can either just you just don't actually address them at all. You don't address any of these kind of elements to your life, maybe even issues, discussions of issues. That's another thing why discussing is important, why talking about it is important. Maybe you're a person, as I said, who just doesn't like to address all those things at all. Or maybe you're a person who likes to read about it and likes to kind of do their own research or just discovering of certain things by themselves and prefers not to discuss it. Like, those are alternatives. The issues I find with them, though, is, well, one, if you don't like to talk about certain things, let's say, I mean, this is all about kind of life stuff. If you don't like to discuss kind of how you're feeling, your emotions, your troubles in life, and you keep them to yourself, then you usually internalize a lot of those issues and a lot of the emotional struggle that might come with it, and you internalize like negative emotion as well. And there are like ways to actually get that emotion out, but like we discussed in the emotion video, if you don't get those emotions out, they can be quite poisonous to you as a character without even realizing it. And that's why talking about it is so important. But more so on the point of like why it's important, or why it's detrimental to not discuss things, but more so why discussion is important rather than just letting it out. Because you could actually talk about something. You could go to a therapist and you could just like say everything on your mind. There's a difference between saying things and discussing things. So when you go into a therapist, you're not really having a full-on discussion. It's more just about you expressing your feelings, etc., which is how you kind of deal with emotional baggage. But you're not necessarily having a full-on discussion about someone else's opinion and what they think and how they might view things differently, because therapy is all about yourself. So with the discussion, obviously the idea is it's an exchange of ideas, an exchange of opinions. You're offering up your perspective, you're offering up for critique as well. And the importance of that is well, basically the realization that we make loads of interpretations of the world. We all have different perceptions. We all view things differently. And the idea that we're also, quite naive to a loads of things, which I think is just a given. And therefore, we can't see everything. Like, all the opinions that we have on certain things, it's going to be incomplete. It's inevitably going to be incomplete. And that's why actually discussing things is quite important, because then you're offering up your opinion and you're allowing someone to come back with critique of your opinion, or offering up their alternative opinion, which you may have never considered before. And there have been multiple times in the past, I know, and I'm sure if you can look back, you know, even if you're not one to like discuss, to when you talk to people, you've heard of a thing that you've never heard of before, and it makes you consider. It makes you consider things. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it that way before. And I have to like give basically massive credit to loads of people in my life in the past where I've had certain discussions that has led to the way I think now, and I fundamentally think it's been a lot healthier, the way I think now, and a lot more complete. Well, not complete, a lot more rounded than it was before. I feel like I understand things better. I'm better constructed. I know myself better as well, because it's being very good with kind of self-examination, because, you know, someone might even give me a critique of me saying, yeah, Sam, like, you know, maybe you make people feel guilty, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's a good point. I never thought about it in that way before, and let me go and think about that. And that's inevitable, because there are things that we do, and things that may be harmful, or maybe not like true to, well, maybe true to who we are, or what we agree with, or thinking that's not what I would do. Like, I can't believe I do that thing, and it really makes you consider it, and it's just why it's so important. That's why, like, other people's like perspective is really essential to kind of evolving your own perspective, your own ideas, your own positions on things, because it's ever evolving, and discussion provides you something that a book or absorbing some information doesn't, as much. Like, it can offer different ideas, it can critique your own, like, that's very possible, but stuff with like absorbing content is kind of quite one-dimensional. Rather than a discussion, it's a back and forth, and it's like examination of your ideas, while at the same time, while you're articulating yourself, you're also starting to figure out like what you actually really believe in. Because as we've discussed in another video in the past about, you're only truly thinking when, you know, you're articulating yourself. Like, discussion is kind of messy. You know, there are things that you just don't know, and that, like, when you actually go through discussion, you kind of realize again, like, what you actually think, what you don't actually know, which you thought you knew, your assumptions that you've made that actually were kind of not based on as much solid ground as you thought they were, and it really makes you examine it and rethink it and go, oh, especially to the point of maybe like if you're kind of having a discussion and you say something and then someone comes with the counter and you kind of feel embarrassed, or you feel guilty, or you feel like you're not equipped, or you're making false assumptions. It kind of inspires you to actually go, okay, I need to look at this a bit more. I need to come back and, you know, come back with some more solid arguments. You know, it really kind of encourages you to really kind of round out what you believe in and what you think, and the arguments that you put forward, in a way that reading doesn't. It provides that motivation, whether it is, you know, the unfortunate state, if you're not kind of like confident or self-aware, it might be humiliation, right? Like, you have a discussion and you kind of present a point and someone goes, well, actually that's not true at all because of this thing, or you fail to see this area within your argument, and someone might be embarrassed, and generally we are can be embarrassed because we don't like the idea of being wrong, you know, and that's generally why sometimes we find it very hard to have discussion. Discussion can be sometimes quite revealing for ourselves, and almost quite, it's a state of some level of vulnerability which we don't find comfortable, and that's why a lot of people don't like to partake in discussion, especially if it's discussion with someone who has a very different opinion. I think it's within our nature. Or if you have like a passion for discussion, and a curiosity, and so then when you are, say, proven wrong, or made to consider something that you hadn't considered or challenged on your assumptions, that kind of person will go, oh, that's a really good point, and I haven't considered that, and I'm going to go away and think about this, and I'm going to actually see if I can update my thinking. So there's kind of two different kinds, but ultimately the discussion motivates you to better yourself, right? Though in the first instance, it can also almost make you so fearful of being wrong or feeling so uncomfortable or anxious about being wrong or humiliated in discussion that you actually decide just to run away from discussion altogether. So that is another possible outcome, and it happens many, many times. So that's the downfall of discussion. But as we know with everything, like everything in life that is worth it is not easy. Especially on challenging issues, you should feel uncomfortable when having discussion, and hopefully over time, the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel. It certainly has been for me. Like I certainly didn't like discussing my emotions or discussing anything political or philosophical in the past because it made me very uncomfortable. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't like what felt like an examination, and it kind of gets quite defensive. But over time, the more discussion I had, the more resilient I became to that, and it made me a better person. So you find people who don't really like discussion tend to be people who don't like the idea of being examined, who actually see that, like for example, politics. The classic thing with politics is like, yeah, we discuss politics, but at the end of the day, what is the outcome? Like, the world's not going to change because of the discussion that we've just had, and maybe if we agree a bit more, yeah, but so what? Like, that's not going to change anything. One thing it certainly has changed is it has changed your ability to actually be more resilient with discussion. It's changed your ability to be more critically minded. It's changed your ability to actually listen to other perspectives. And like discussions on politics can even help you even have a better tolerance for discussions about anything else, really, like emotion. It makes you more open. It makes you more willing to be critiqued. So actually there is a benefit. Just some people don't see it so clearly or so easily. Like I said, with every single discussion. So discussion in general, whether it's applied to whatever topic, such as very tricky topics as emotions or politics or philosophy, generally, if approached in the right way and seen the benefits, can be hugely beneficial for you. It can make you more mentally resilient. It can make you more open-minded. It can make you more curious. It can make you challenge your own assumptions. And ultimately, it can be part of, like, your evolution, like, your mental evolution, like, your growth. And it's something, as I said, like, books, etc., don't offer as much of. And also, as well, like, there's not much of the challenging. There's not much of a challenge when it comes to books, because you tend to find that people who don't like discussion but would like to read books or like to listen to videos tend to listen to things that generally align with what they agree with, rather than with a discussion. There's more uncertainty there, and you can be challenged to a greater degree, and there's a bit more nuance, and I think the idea of in essence kind of assuming that the person you're talking to knows something you don't is quite a powerful thought, because then it really, I don't know, makes you kind of more open to the idea of listening to another person, because they, as I said, they might have some information that you don't have, and because we're all unique, that's always the case. Even from the most unlikely sources, where you might not see that they're the most intellectually astute or can offer any real insight, you'll be surprised, because depending on the topic, some as we said, everyone has different experiences, and they can offer some insight. Let's say someone who's like might not be, as I said, very intellectual, but has like had a lot of experiences in life and maybe some emotional trauma. They might be able to offer some insight or some wisdom that you might not have been aware of, or a perspective you might not have been aware of. And this is why discussion is so important, and we should really encourage it. And also how detrimental it can be if they don't like to talk about things, and they prefer just to kind of keep to themselves, because then you're not being held to account really. And if you're not being held to account, then your thoughts tend to become warped. It tends to become quite self-damaging, and you also start to become quite judgmental of other people as well, because it's like very easy to judge, but then you don't take part in discussions, so you don't want to be held accountable. So it's almost a bit like your perception is almost a bit tyrannical. It's like, I can pass the judgment, I can have my opinions, but then I'm not going to allow my opinions to be put into taken to account, or have accountability given to it. I like to judge, but I do that because I don't like to be judged, and that happens a lot with people who don't like to discuss things and don't see the benefit in discussing things. So yeah, that's just my general two cents on how discussion is really essential to your growth, and how you should really try to pursue it, because it is uncomfortable, but that's a part of kind of overcoming those challenges. And if you don't like discussion, and you only think you can hold yourself accountable alone, you're living in a bit of a false fallacy. So that's it. I hope that was useful. I hope it's kind of a bit of inspiration to see the positives of discussion and how it can really make you a better person. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And a beautiful day. That's how I say it. Yeah, getting back into it now. Ciao for now.